Welcome, welcome. It's Sunday, Spotlight Series. I'm Zach Ritter. I'm Associate Dean of Students at Cal State Dominguez Hills. And I believe it's my boss who connected me with this amazing guest today, but we'll get there. So Community Works Institute, communityworksinstitute.org is where you need to go to check out all these cool Spotlight series that Joe Brooks does, who's the director of the nonprofit Community Works Institute, and I do the Sunday shows. And remember, communityworksinstitute.org is the place that brings the community to the classroom and the classroom to the community. There's all these professional development opportunities. There's all these institutes that you should take your K through 16 educators to if you want to learn about DEI stuff, if you want to learn about storytelling and ethnography, all the good things that are probably going to help us get back, well, not online, but get back in human form after this terrible devastation of not only systemic racism that we continue to live with, but also COVID, right? That's killing everybody as well. So Professor Damon Cagnolatti is here. See, I was going to do it the Italian way.
Try it the Italian way. Let's do that.
Cagnolatti. Is that
Cagnolatti?
Cagnolatti. Nice. Okay, Damon Cagnolatti is here with us today. He is a professor at Cerritos. He also runs a really dope nonprofit that I'm going to let him tell you about. But with no further ado, hello, brother. How are you? Talk to us.
What's going on, my brother? How you doing, man? It's your friendly neighborhood Professor Cag, swinging through the hallways, highways, and the byways of a local Zoom room near you. It looks like we actually chilling with the Community Works Institute today. I'm just hanging on like a hubcap in the fast lane, really, through these COVID times, to be quite honest with you. But look, we still rolling. Kelly rolling with no Beyonce. We just rolling. That's it, man.
You're hosting the show. You just out. I love that.
Man, look, check this out. I just love it, man. I mean, as you were explaining just the Community Works Institute, how you all put the community back into the classroom and try to bring the classroom to the community. I mean, that's right on up my alley. I kind of sort of feel like I'm home, except I'm not going to take my shoes off. I just came back from a hike, so I'm not going to do y'all like that. I just want to just let you know, look, man, I'm enjoying the space and I'm just feeling real good. I'm feeling very blessed to be here. Thank you so much, Zach.
Man, you and I need to go Hollywood. I mean, or we need to bring Hollywood into the classroom into Hollywood, because man, we need to go beyond these four walls of our institution.
Let's do it. Look, check this out, man. Hey, Lil Wayne called himself a Martian, you know what I'm saying? And I just really think about myself as just being somebody who's just trying to get from here to the moon. Only thing I'm trying to actually figure out is just how I'm gonna do it, because that's the goal, that's the destination. All we got to do is just put the plan together, put one pylon right in front of the other, build some stuff together, you know what I'm saying? Find some folks who we have some community with, who got knowledge that's beyond just either one of ourselves, put it together and figure out, okay, look, so we got the plan. Here's how we're gonna actually get from where we are to the moon. That's the goal. That's our destination. We're trying to get to the stars.
I love that. That reminds me of that person. Who was it? Aristotle or somebody says that, no. It's, God, is it St. Augustine or something was saying, we are spiritual beings having a physical experience.
Oh yeah, those are facts. I mean, even if it wasn't St. Augustine, even if it was the brother Aristotle, or if it was the brother Plato, like, I mean, just the sentiments in and of itself is something that kind of permeates and just it floats through just that time period, and also too those thinkers. So they're all playing around with those ideas, trying to explore really what the deeper meaning is, not only just to life, but really for themselves. A lot of these folks here were not all that dissimilar from the kind of professional and kind of mission work that Community Works Institute does, right? Which is, me in my head, right, and kind of how I understand it, is that you all are in the business of teaching, right? Both within and beyond the classroom. And so were those brothers too back in the day. So, they always had to have something to, at the very least, teach, but also to inform and make meaning or give shape to their lives and the experiences that they were going through. And so, you know, that makes sense that they're actually thinking on that on such an esoteric level and trying to make these connections between, you know, kind of, you know, what lies beyond, right, you know, or in a certain kind of way, right, the kind of spiritual, right, or the ethereal realm, and also to, right, the physical, because, you know, stories kind of mediate, right, those two different realms right there, right? It ends up kind of creating a bridge that connects the two. And if you can kind of capture it in a story, some words or some language or any kind of symbolic action, then you have a way of making sense out of that which makes no sense. You know,
Which
that's
is
really what I think is the connective tissue between those two kind of, or you know, the idea, whether or not it came from Saint Augustine or Aristotle or Plato or whoever.
no, I hit us with some Carter G. Woodson. What's going on?
Carter G. Woodson is oh man. I was in the 6th grade when I was given a book report to do. Usually I did my book reports with my mom. I grew up in a single parent family household, but the relationship that my mom and my dad actually had was one that was based and premised on work. I don't mean like their jobs. I mean, this was the work that they were trying to actually come together for, right? They came together, partnered, co-parented, right? Before there was even that kind of word or phrase or language to raise me. So I grew up kind of across like 2 different households, right? Mom throughout the week, pops on Sunday, Fridays through Sunday. And you know, one time in 6th grade, I ended up having to write a book report that my dad said that he was going to help me with. My dad was a history buff. He loved history, and it was just he could spout not only facts and dates, but really just, you know, whole events off the top of his head easily, just about as easily as he could actually name, you know, whatever jazz musician was actually popping from 1930 to 40, or even like the 20s to the 30s. He just knew it, right? And so my dad, he said, no, look, I don't want you to actually write your book report on none of those other books that your school actually has you writing your book reports on. We're gonna go on over here to this other bookstore. I'm gonna get you some books about yourself. Right. And my dad, he talked exactly. If anyone out here who happens to see this knows my dad, that is probably a 100% spot on imitation of my father. Like, he talks at that tone and cadence and everything. The other bookstore that my father was talking about was a bookstore called Esselwan's Book, which is actually very, very popular now. And it was very, very popular even back in the days in the early parts of the 90s, like throughout LA. It's a staple in just the Los Angeles, kind of South LA, South Central Los Angeles kind of community, right? In Leimert Park. It's a staple there. My dad wanted to take me to Esselwan's bookstore so that way I could get some books by people that were written by people who looked like me and who were thinking the way, or who actually provided frameworks or guides for how it is that I can think more critically about not only myself, but also to the community in which I live, right? Which is South LA or South Central. Well, we went to Esselwan's and he happened to find this book called The Miseducation of the Negro. And he told me, he said, this is the book that you really need to do your book report on. Let me tell you something. You know who Carter G. Woodson was? I said, no, I didn't know who is that? He said, well, you know about Black History Month, right? Isn't that what you all are just celebrating right now? Well, yeah. I said, okay. Where'd you think that came from? I know he's trying to point me to Carter G. Woodson, but I just don't know, like, okay, there's a couple more steps in between there that I kind of sort of need. He said, before it was Black History Week, before it was Black History Month, it was a week. And the first person to ever put that on the map, Carter G. Woodson. In addition to a whole bunch of other things too. You need to actually get this book. Mind you, if anybody knows anything about Carter G. Woodson, any scholars out there know about Carter G. Woodson, you go pick up The Miseducation of the Negro right now, you go read that introduction. That's not a book that a 12-year-old should be reading, or at least I felt completely inadequate to understand what it was that he was saying. I literally sat there in the car. We went from Esselwan's to Ralph's over in Ladera, in the Ladera Center. I stayed in the car while he ran inside, and I'm trying to figure out in these first couple of pages, what? I know this is English, but I don't understand some of these words he's using. What is a tutim? What is this? I don't even understand. What? And my pops finally came on back to the car, and he's like, "Oh, so you cracked it open, huh?" I said, "Yeah, Dad. I don't know if I could do my book report on this one right here, man. This is a lot. This is too much. I don't understand what he's saying." Like, and he said, "Well, read it to me." So we sitting in the car. He's driving. We rolling, and I'm reading it to him, and I'm struggling over the words, but I'm getting through it. And he's explaining it to me. He'll tell me. We'll read up to a certain point. He would stop me, then he would translate. And that's essentially my first introduction, not only to Carter G. Woodson, but legitimately to the practice, the art of what some scholars would actually refer to as critical thinking, right? I would say that was my first induction into the space, the realm, the vicinity of scholarship. Because all it was for me was this constant wrestle and struggle to, once I actually figure out what it is that they're saying, find out how it connects to me, so that way I can learn how I can use it to actually help to transform, reshape, and rethink our community. One of the major lessons that I got out of Carter G. Woodson was from chapter, I believe it's 10, it's either 10 or 11, and it's called Service Rather Than Leadership. That is what he actually argued for as one of the main solutions at the time that he's kind of writing this. He's coming out with this in the 1930s, but that's what he's arguing for, is the main remedy to the existential and kind of social and economic conundrum that Black folks find themselves in at this time, right? And that they found themselves in even kind of 50 years prior, right? Moving out of the era of Reconstruction, which is, here's this question, right? What's the best pathway for Black folks to achieve self-determination? It's the same question that Booker T. Washington was struggling with, same question that W.E.B. Du Bois was struggling with. Alain Locke, that question there birthed in a certain kind of way, right? The new Negro movement from 1918 to 1925, all the way through where Carter G. Woodson drops the miseducation of the Negro. He's taking these ideas and he's saying that the ultimate route for Black folks, the best route for Black folks to actually achieve self-determination, what they need now is really service within the community, as opposed to trying to promote specific people as heads of leaders to control power, right? That's what Carter G. Woodson, that's how I got introduced to Carter G. Woodson, and really, I think why he's so significant, not only for me, but really for my academic journey.
How did the book report go?
Man, my teacher gave me a B+. You know, which is fair. I mean, it's not a terrible grade, but you know, it wasn't an A paper. I got a B+, more so probably because I was so struggling with my understanding. My father definitely helped me to kind of learn how to formulate my own words and learn how to formulate my own ideas and thoughts on the page. And so when I did that, you know, that I think that's what translated and that's what showed. So I got the B+, but here's the thing, so that introduction into Carter G. Woodson always kept me curious throughout my entire academic journey. There was never ever a moment where I went through an academic experience and didn't think back to, what the heck was Carter G. Woodson trying to say about this? How does this relate to service rather than leadership? How can I use this for service?
You told me that there was another one that's kind of slept on, but that's almost more important, even equally, if not more important. What was that book called?
From Carter G. Woodson?
Yeah.
The Education of the Negro. So here's what I never got, right? So I never returned back. So I did not finish the entire book. I had to read like kind of selected chapters when I was 12, right? And for that book report, it was kind of a compressed amount of time, but also too, it was just deep. And I'm like, yo, my mom got at my dad too and was like, man, this book here he needed more time to actually go over this. So what I didn't actually get introduced to was his own kind of more energetic, more thoughtful, and more strategic response to his critique of that he's laying out in the Miseducation of the Negro, which is the education of the Negro, right? So that's kind of like if we're thinking about the miseducation as part one, the intro, right, which provides a very strong and staunch socioeconomic critique, a socioeconomic and historical critique, definitely more historical than those other two parts, the social and the economic. Then his response to that, or his kind of where do we go from here book, is The Education of the Negro, which is oftentimes, that is the one it's highly slept on. I slept on it. I didn't even know about it until maybe a few years ago when a friend of mine at another community college actually kind of enlightened me to, and was like, yeah, that's cool. Damn, you talking about service and leadership. You checked out The Education of the Negro? I said, huh? So that's the other one that I would say is definitely way more slept on.
Interesting. Okay. So yeah, because it's now I need to check it out, because it's called The Education of the Negro Prior to 1861, which is a lot, slavery times and all the things. So if I understand what he's saying, and what the wall behind you is saying, is like, if you control a person's thinking, if you inculcate someone's brain enough with like the Malcolm X stuff of like, who taught you to hate your hair, your skin, your body, your spirit, all the things, then you can control a people, a person, the whole thing. And I guess that's what America has been doing with Black folks and Native folks, and in some ways, Latinx folks and a bunch of other different folks. And so you are taking this ethos of trying to do away with some of this trauma, trying to do some healing, trying to do some new ways of thinking. How do you take these ideas and mix them into the soup that is your classroom and the soup that is your nonprofit?
That's a great question. And, when I think about this soup, right, I mean, we can kind of put a little bit of flavor in the soup too, right? I think about it more so kind of like through the lens or through the metaphor of like a gumbo, right? And of course, that's not a new concept or nothing like that, right? I mean, everybody from Ishmael Reed to Trey Ellis to heck, Reggie, Hudlin, right? The Hudlin brothers. I mean, there's Spike Lee. I mean, there's all of these folks who utilize it, who have utilized this metaphor here before to describe, the where they're pulling from, right? And also too, so the sources and the direction or the blueprint or vision or plan that they want to enact, right? So for me, how does all of this here actually kind of come together? Well, I mean, of course, right? Just like with gumbo, you got to start off, right? If your roux ain't right, you might as well throw the whole thing away. If you don't have the right roux, right, your base, what we doing here? You're gonna have to start all over. So that base or that roux, I would definitely say, is for me actually in Carter G. Woodson's The Miseducation of the Negro, and specifically that chapter. I want to say it's either 9, 10, or 11. I want to say it's an odd number, I think. So it might be either 9 or 11. But the chapter where it's entitled, right, Service Rather Than Leadership. You see, for me, that's really where that's the foundation or the base. What Carter G. Woodson is kind of laying out there, right, in that chapter is part of what he's really kind of laying out a critique of the temptations that actually come about through a people gaining access to capital and capitalism, right? In a very real kind of way, part of at that time what people were arguing for, right, in both the political arena and also too, even like in the arts or literature arena, right, was kind of full inclusion, right, into the fabric of the American imaginary, right, or into, right, this ethos, right, of American liberty, justice, and freedom for all, right, those things that are codified in a certain kind of way. It's kind of made real, right, through Declaration of Independence, right, as well as rituals and traditions, so on and so forth. That's the argument that folks are trying to, that's what people are trying to argue for, is that full inclusion. However, Carter G. Woodson cautions against that full inclusion. He says, chill, wait, hold on. Let's think about this just a little bit, right? Let's think about this within the context of, let's say that 1 or 2, because all of you are not going to gain access, right? And he's speaking largely, right, to an audience in this particular chapter here, right, I would argue, right, to Black folks, right, just kind of speaking more directly and holding up a bit of a mirror to the community, right, or to the culture. And he's saying, well, let's look at this. let's think about all the way up until now, up until this point, right? Where have our leaders gone after they've gained access?
Mm.
And a rapper by the name of Dub C, right, who was a part of like the West Side Connection in the early 1990s or mid to late 1990s, has a song, and it's an OJ sample, and I'm blanking on the name of the song right now, but it's the last track on his entire album called The Shadiest One. But in it, right, he drops a line and he says something that always resonated to me because of Carter G. Woodson. He says, why every time and he's speaking to gangsters, right? He's speaking about like gangsters, right? Why every time, well, excuse me, sorry, he's not speaking about gangsters, but he's speaking about just folks who are actually on that track or who have aspirations and ambitions towards success or whatever that means, people who want the American dream. He says, why every time we get some money and things are going good, we all of a sudden pack up and move up out the hood, right? This is the same point that Carter G. Woodson is actually trying to caution, trying to actually raise and illustrate in that chapter, right? Service rather than leadership, by illustrating the kind of telos or the trajectory through which individuals who are actually selected, what he calls like racial racketeers, right? As people who are handpicked or selected to be in positions of leadership, right? To represent a certain kind of not only moral authority, but also a political structure that represents or reproduces or affirms, right, and does not challenge racial capitalism, like specifically white racial capitalism. And the reason why this here is significant in that particular chapter is because these are the people who are whether elected or selected, right, or kind of plotted, right. These are the individuals who, for all intents and purposes, are recognized both individually and socially as leaders, right? Carter G. Woodson says he wants to kind of caution against that, right? He says, you know what, because that road right there is that's really the road that's paved to becoming a racial racketeer, right? And it's not even that you become a racial racketeer, he's arguing, at the end of that destination. He's saying from the jump, you know what I'm saying? Because of what Du Bois talks about, a double consciousness and how Black folks struggle with that, not only individually, but also too socially and collectively in community, right? There's this kind of war between the consciousness that makes and paints, right, the route to achieving the American dream, as it's popularly kind of constructed, appetizing to Black folks. Not only appetizing, but they also too see it as the route, as the only way to actually achieve success, right? But Du Bois is trying to caution us along that line because he's saying, yo, look, that comes at a cost. That comes at a cost of you actually providing service to your own community, not all that dissimilar. Here's an analogy that he actually makes to women who were on the slave plantations, Black women who were on the slave plantations, who were, after just giving birth, forced to nurse white babies with their breast milk, while being afterward being drained and not having anything to go back and to give to their own family, their own sons and daughters. Carter G. Woodson is saying, time out. What we really need, right? When we can actually begin to not only through the education path, through the economic independence path, right? Through whatever pathway it is that we actually see that's viable for helping us to actualize our destiny, or really helping us to actualize, right? And destiny just quite simply is another way for him to talk about self-determination. Whatever route it is that we take to achieve self-determination, we need to, right, in the words of another famous philosopher, right, go out the hood, right, and don't return until you learn something. And when you learn something, come back and drop it in the hood and help to cultivate it, right? So that way you build up your own organic structures that allow for and support self-determination. So how does this actually kind of dovetail on into, like, say, the classroom and like my nonprofit? That's our mission, both within the classroom and also too in the organization. That's what it actually means, right? When you go back and you take those lessons that you've learned throughout your world travels, throughout your travels down the academic journey, throughout your travels down, right, wherever it is that life is taking you, when you return back home, right, where you got folks saying, look, hey, baby, we've been waiting on you. Yo, you came back. Yes, I came back, and I came back to actually build something from the ground, from the soil, out of the mud,
Mm.
Not only roses grow in concrete, even lotuses grow in mud.
Mm.
From that, you could have all types of beauty, all types of new possibility, all types of new heights
Mm.
and new ways to imagine strategies and approaches
Mm.
out of your current circumstances, which
Mm.
is ultimately what I think a lot of those ancestors who were both scholarly, right, both in the kind of secular scholarly realm and also too in the sacred kind of, behind the pulpit realm. I think that's ultimately what they were trying to actually get us to understand.
Mm.
And that's what it means to emerge. That's
Mm.
what emerge is all about, right? To
Mm.
make that transition from the mud into the air, into the sky, into freedom, into
Mm.
possibility.
Mm. I love that. Okay, so we're here. So tell us what happens in Emerge.
So Emerge is a nonprofit that actually takes and produces future leaders from out of Black and Brown communities, and really aims to, goodness gracious, man, there's just so much kind of connection here. I couldn't have asked for just a better space to be invited into. But we take and raise future leaders, right, in such a way that we try to put the community back into college
Mm.
and onto career paths. So
Mm.
just in terms of the synergy that I believe we have between the Community Works Institute and also too between Emerge, it's in that part where I think about this in terms of, I think about education as really a vestibule that helps to kind of usher in, right, folks who are outside, folks who are made to, right, be outside for whatever reason they find themselves outside, right, either structural reasons, right, we can already talk about that, right, we kind of hit on it, especially with Carter G Woodson, right, and the miseducation of the Negro. They find themselves outside. Education is not just a pathway, it's more of a vestibule, an actual construct, right, with an entire anteroom, really a room that you enter into before you actually enter into the main building of this new structure that you're trying to actually gain access to, right, which holds, of course, right, all kinds of resources, social capital, so on and so forth. But Emerge seeks to open up or bring out the classroom into the community. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the route that we actually take. So through our various partnerships with local community organizations like the 100 Black Men out in Long Beach, even the NAACP, especially like their Long Beach branch, right? Ultimately, right, we're looking to partner with community college, with the Cal State, specifically like the Guardian Scholars Program, right, the Men's Success Alliance, right, and also too our various community college networks, as well as Morehouse the Morehouse Alumni Association. Through these partnerships, what we aim to do is not only create an entire cohort or a pool of mentors, both professional and students, right, who can actually come on in with this project that we actually have, right, called the Fostering Youth Resiliency Project, where we can pair them with young boys, young Black boys who are in the foster care system, ages 12 to 18. We want to pair them with mentors who are from the community to help to guide these young folks up into, right, that college or community pathway.
Mm.
That's essentially what Emerge is actually all about. That's actually what we have going on right now.
Mm. Mm. Damn, that's a lot. Okay, so where do you, now I want to get to the classroom too. So, okay, how did it come about? Because you told this story about your father being this like really dope mentor and putting you on to all these new things that you like at 12 years old, you like many 12-year-olds, you weren't thinking about this stuff. Does some of that ethos that your mother and your father and other family members and community members instilled in you, was that the lotus, birth
Kind of
flower that
growing.
came, like, how did it come about?
So a lot of that, so I would say that my parents were actually they planted the seeds.
Hmm.
Somebody else had to actually come on in and actually water it, right? Or if we're sticking with the gumbo metaphor, right, you actually have to now kind of build up your base, right? You have to now add your veggies, right? Your onions, your celery, or whatever it is, right? Your corn or whatever it is that folks actually kind of put in gumbo. That's the thing about gumbo. You could actually mix it up with just about anything, and as long as your base is right, you solid. I had a solid base in my parents. That's exactly who they were. But other people actually came around to kind of add various ingredients. Probably, the biggest person who added all of the good stuff, I would definitely say, you know, like your sausage or your, you know, your shrimps and all of that stuff, I would definitely say was an instructor that I had. He wasn't even my teacher. I never had him directly for a class, but he was an instructor at my high school. His name was Thomas Lee. And Thomas Lee, he was somebody different. He is actually the my mentor who started Emerge. Thomas Lee actually took a group of young boys. I went to King Drew Medical Magnet High School in 1999. And by about 2000, 2001, no, excuse me, sorry, 2001, 2002, during that school year, Emerge was actually established as a student group at King Drew Medical Magnet High School. Really, after Thomas saw some young kids who were hanging out in the hallways, always getting in trouble, he was like, look, check this out. We got a lot of people who are patrolling these hallways and y'all do not need to be in this tardy sweep. Come on into my classroom. If you had an argument with the teacher, come on into my classroom. Don't just be rolling out here in these hallways. Come on in here, right? We can do whatever. We can talk about whatever. So just the opening of his space in the classroom, he was able to actually kind of show really this first group, this first kind of iteration, this first prototype of Emerge, the kind of first firmaments of Emerge, really the power of critical thinking by analyzing and breaking down and taking more seriously, not just as a form of entertainment, but really as kind of scholarly text, hip hop songs. I'm talking about Mos Def. This is 2002. Black Star, that's Mos Def, that's Quali, that's Pharoah Monch, you know what I'm saying? That's Dead Prez, that's, you know, who's the, right? That's Nas, that's Jay, right? That's Nas's Lost Tapes, as a matter of fact, comes out like kind of in 2002, 2003, as a matter of fact. And it was actually Nas's Lost Tapes kind of that connected me, that Thomas introduced in one of these Emerge meetings as a student group. He had these meetings after school where he would actually kick knowledge to us using hip hop songs. And the one that he actually used for us was actually Nas's Black Zombies and Purple, right? Do-Rags too as well. Just the images that Nas is actually painting in those songs look like the images that kind of colored our own environments. But Nas was actually dropping different lines, like they use potato to make liquor in prison, speaking about the ingenuity of, or really how much you can't stamp down, right, the human spirit and creativity. Even when it's actually locked down and incarcerated, you still cannot actually contain it. For me, that was actually something that was quite magical. There was something that was transformational in those lines that Thomas actually helped to frame using Emerge. And this wasn't even a formal class. This was class kind of like formal class adjacent. So through this particular organization or this group, what we ended up doing was hosting more forums, creating more spaces, symposiums, poetry nights, mentoring, college peer counseling. We ended up creating these spaces where we were able to utilize hip hop as a tool to explain critical thinking, not only concepts, but tools. Things like breaking down lyrics, right, was just simple critical thinking strategy, otherwise known as analysis. Well, you see, that introduction got me connected to a passion and a love. It got me aware of a passion and a love that I ended up developing over time for writing and for composition. See, I ended up actually changing my major from biological sciences into an English major once I graduated from King Drew and moved on to UCR. At the same time that we started or got reinvigorated at UCR's campus, our new iteration of Emerge. At the end of that summer, we did all the same things. We held symposiums, canned food drives. We went and mentored out in the community. We did all kinds of community-based service activities in the community. And at the end of the year, me and my boy who actually started it up, we looked at ourselves because we had to go and find jobs like at the end of the year, like for the summer. It was like, man, hey, wouldn't it be dope if we could just continue doing this for like ever? And like if we actually can make a living off of it, and then like also to help other people to like gain access to so that way they don't have to search for jobs and things like that over the summer. Because at that time it was very hard to try to find jobs. Fast forward to now, one of my best friends, as a matter of fact, who's my boy. I've been knowing him ever since I was 13. We knew each other at King Drew. We went to UCR together and started Emerge there, and we're just lifelong friends. Last year, 2020, we actually established it as a fully formed nonprofit, as an official nonprofit, because we knew that we wanted to take our ideas and our vision and our passion to the next level. And we wanted to actually open up these community classrooms. So we knew that we had to actually establish it as a nonprofit. He just recently passed away in February, as a matter of fact, before I could actually tell him about this grant opportunity that we had won to literally make all of our dreams come true. And he passed away 2 weeks after we got notice that we had just received a sub-grant from one of the larger parent organizations, Friends of the Children, Los Angeles, to mentor young Black boys, 100 young Black boys, ages 12 to 18, from out of the foster care system. And he never got a chance to actually hear that message. But that's how I believe all of this actually connects, between from the community to the classroom and back out to the community again. This is really just kind of the coalescence, I would say, a kind of convergence of just energy and the ideas and the dreams that we had when we were 16.
That's Thomas Lee?
That was Thomas Lee.
Damn.
That was Thomas Lee.
Yeah, well, he did a lot. He did a lot. He planted a lot of seeds, and
oh man,
that's beautiful, man. They're growing, and I'm sure hopefully he's looking down and proud of all the work that's been accomplished right here. So then
I'm sorry. Just a real quick, just note a distinction. I'm sorry. So Thomas Lee was the teacher who actually like kind of got us started. So he was more kind of like, the waterer. So he was the teacher who opened up his classroom. My best friend was actually DeAndre Rose. That's my dear brother right there, who we definitely big ups, and we definitely pray that he's looking down on us, and he's smiling, just because we're able to enact that vision that lived in his heart.
Wow. Damn. Wow, that's harsh. So the classroom, let's talk about the classroom. You and I talked about hip hop. We talked about the cipher. We talked about like Dr. Chris Emden and right, what happens in a like rap cipher, like you say something sparks my mind. I have to like, not cite you, but I have to like take your ideas, put it in the gumbo, put my own stuff in there, make it sound good, make it flow, and then on to the next. And I guess brain wise, it does a lot of things for, young people, old people, all the people, but we don't think of that in formal white settings as productive or educational or formative. So what do you do in the classroom? Because we got K through 16 educators that are listening to this. So, and they want to do creative stuff. They want to, whatever, be relevant. What do you do in your classrooms that you find that's really, really working?
So the thing, this is part of the reason why I definitely wanted why I had to kind of lay the foundation with Emerge, Thomas, and what some of those kind of class adjacent meetings, right, in Emerge in high school kind of look like, because that's what I do that's different. For me, that's the base, right? That's in terms of like my pedagogy, right? In terms of my classroom pedagogy. So I teach composition. My background as an educator, after UC Riverside, I went to Penn State and received a master's degree in arts with a special emphasis in composition and rhetoric. So just, having that kind of background really helped to ground me in an understanding about the power of composition, right? Not just writing, but really the act of composing and reimagining, right? Analyzing and kind of, reinterpreting symbols and putting them together in such a way that it could actually be interpreted to new audiences, right? In new ways, in order toward the goal of creating new meanings, right? That's where like that kind of field, or like my kind of steeping in the field of composition is kind of rooted in. But of course, I'm from LA, and I'm also too from King Drew, and I went to and I was a part of Emerge, so I gotta actually put a little bit of paint where it ain't. That's where hip hop actually comes into play at. You see, for me, I always understood that really the classroom was, ciphers were actually classrooms that existed that always could pop up spontaneously in the community. And that's the reason why Emerge had such a powerful impact, I would say, not only on myself. I couldn't even lay claim like as the inventor or originator of the idea of Emerge, but really for so many other young folks who were in our high school and who went off to other colleges. That was the reason why it was so powerful for us. I know I'm not the only one who's had this kind of experience, and it was because of the cipher. What Thomas was doing, without even telling us this, right? But he was very fully conscious and intentional about doing this. He wanted to open up a space where folks could actually come into and learn from each other, where young folks could actually learn from each other. And really, it's in that exchange or dialogue, not all that dissimilar from like where you see in a cipher, right? How you have two individuals, two MCs. It could even not be two MCs. It could just be one MC in the middle of a cipher, right? And they're just freestyling off the top of their dome. Freestyling kind of functions in two different ways. You got two different definitions that oftentimes are competing. I see them really as kind of being more as composites, but we can kind of talk about that, but they're either spontaneously expressing the first thought off the top of their head, or they're coming in there with ideas and thoughts that they had before they actually got there, before they arrived in that space or in that cipher, but that aren't necessarily fully connected. So it's kind of like a stream of consciousness, and it's free from any sort of kind of regulation. You see, that's how we were entering into those cipher spaces, right? Into those cipher classrooms. As young folks who had ideas and young folks who had thoughts, we knew that we brought something to the table, or rather to the desk in the classroom. However, the way that classrooms are traditionally set up, they're not set up to actually recognize or to even value that as a part of the learning, and as part of their learning equation, right? So what I do in the classroom is just that. I try to recreate not just that experience, but really the cipher. So one of the hardest things that a lot of students like just perennially kind of struggle with, I would say, in writing classes is the hardest part, getting started. Okay. That's the hardest part. Okay. How can I use hip hop in order to leverage some tools, some thinking, some lenses, really is what I was looking for. Just in my research and my studies at Penn State, I was looking through the different scholars and different scholarship for how they talk about, how they theorize hip hop as something that could be used as a tool to develop literacy, not just language, right? But the ability not only to kind of read, right, or to break down or deconstruct text, but also to reconstruct it. So folks like Elaine Richardson, right, Kermit Campbell, probably the best person who's been the most inspirational to me is the director of first year writing and composition at Howard University, who goes by the name of Professor David Green. He's otherwise known as, forever will be known in my book as the hip hop professor. That I call him that. He was the one who actually kind of broke down to me just really how rich, how valuable, and how important hip hop is as a tool for developing literacies, right? Not just as this kind of monolith. So in other words, that's just another way of saying how we could use hip hop to actually tap into people's lives and their experiences when they get to the writing classroom. So if the hardest part of writing is getting started, right? Well, the cipher, freestyling, and battling are really three tools that for me make sense and have also too been like a bit of my bread and butter for trying to get students not only beyond that point, but getting them more so connected to the writing. If I can get my students connected with themselves, I don't have to worry about getting started. That's not, the page limits don't matter. If I can get you connected with yourself, that's the only thing that actually matters. And so ciphers actually facilitate those connections. Why? Because ciphers represent infinity. They always take shape and form in a circle, and really in a certain kind of way, right? Wherever kind of two or three or more kind of meet, boom, you have a cipher. Either within that or between amongst you all, right? The sharing and the exchange of ideas and knowledges, right? Always helps to lend itself to the expansion of one's worldview or one's perspectives on life. Now, here's where the twist actually comes in. If I tell my students to come on in with just an outline, which is like a non-conceptual written rhyme, right? Going back to the second definition of freestyling, that outline right there serves as a framework for the use of, or for the enactment of, the spontaneous expression of the first thought that comes off the top of your head, right? The other, or the first definition that I provided of freestyling. I always put on either a Jay Dilla beat, and this is just because I like his sampling, right? It's amazing. Or Jay Rawls, because of the history and the rich lineage of how he blends together both hip hop and jazz. Because what we're talking about in terms of ciphers actually has a kind of intellectual lineage that goes back to the jazz bandstand, right? Where improvisation actually takes hold, and you don't necessarily know what's going to happen next, but you got to kind of listen and be in tune, not only with yourself, but really the people who are around you in that environment, right? The brother Stephon Harris, right? The great jazz player, actually talks about it, has a whole TED talk on it, just called Why There Are No Mistakes in the Bandstand. It's so powerful. When we take that, I literally show that to my students before they get started on their freestyling, because I don't want them to worry about a mistake. If you actually write or misuse a period or misspell a word, okay, cool, great. Draw a line through it. Don't even draw a line through it. Keep writing. Go. That's it. Your job here is just volume. And it's not that it's a perfect way. I'm not trying to get them to write the perfect way, or to get their process started in the perfect way. What I'm trying to get them to do is to connect with themselves through their writing. That's the main thing. So that allows them to, well, not allows them, but it just creates a space in which they can have a little bit more ownership, I think, of their voice, right? It's not complete ownership, but it's just, it moves them closer towards what they were further away from, which is having that ownership of their voice. They take that, they go home, they revise it, come back the following class meeting with the draft, and those drafts get exchanged. I teach them how it is, how you read for organization, coherence, right? Thesis statements, central ideas. I go over it with them in the classroom, and then I have them actually do it on each other's papers. And so when we cipher it, we go to each particular person who's in your group. So you have not only just one person's feedback, but you got like 4 or 5 people's feedback on different aspects of the elements that go into making a strong composition of a paper, right? That's how I utilize the cipher, freestyling, and battling in the classroom. So by the time before they even get to the first, their final draft, what they're submitting to me, they already had base minimum 2 drafts that they've been working on. That's how hip hop is relevant. I would actually say composition needs hip hop, to be quite honest with you. Composition needs hip hop because of the cipher, freestyling, and battling, and the purchase that students actually get when they're able to engage in these hip hop practices. Not only are they philosophies, but these hip hop practices, and how those practices help to improve or enhance their confidence, as well as their relationship to their own voice in writing. Does that make sense?
So you're doing this in the classroom, this liberatory work, you're doing this Emerge nonprofit. Where do you want to be in like 5 to 10 years? Like what would success or growing this or some type of milestone of, what would that look like?
You know what it would look like? I'm not even going to lie to you. It would look like a new underground railroad. That's exactly what it would look like, at least in my vision. Here's why. W.B. Du Bois said that the greatest problem of the 20th century, right, was the problem of the color line, right, the veil. He introduces 3 metaphors, right, in the souls of Black folks, right? I think probably 2 are perhaps maybe the most important for us to really kind of understand relative to like the trajectory of where Emerge is going. The veil and the problem of the color line, right, or kind of double consciousness. In a certain kind of way, if we can understand this veil, right, as a certain kind of way that Du Bois talks about, like this illusion that individuals are kind of inculcated in, right? The illusion of race. Well, the question actually kind of still comes into play, right? One of those questions that we actually mentioned earlier. And I'm just kind of bringing all of these points that we kind of introduced earlier. I'm just trying to tie them all back into, right, this trajectory, right? So the question of what's the best route for Black folks to achieve self-determination? First of all, not only Black folks, but really America writ large has to reconcile this double consciousness that it's experienced and that Carter G. Woodson actually theorized about when he dropped the souls of Black folks, right? We have to reconcile this kind of existential war, right? This kind of great schism that culturally and also too socially as well as politically we find ourselves in. Toni Morrison helps us to understand how we can reconcile, as well as Eric Fromm. Actually, Eric Fromm probably lays the baseline foundation where in his book entitled The Art of Loving, where he actually defines that love, right? The active quality of love is giving. And really the only sane response to the problem of human existence is indeed love. Toni Morrison actually helps to kind of illustrate that and really gives it breadth and life just to that framework, not only in her novels like Song of Solomon or The Bluest Eye, but also too in her book entitled Love. You know what I'm saying? Or even just in her wisdom, like, you know, Toni is Miss Morrison is very much so like a kind of a muse or a guide, more of an oracle. Forget a muse, more of an oracle for me as I think about the trajectory of Emerge and the formation of this new Underground Railroad.
Mm.
So how does that piece there kind of tie in?
Mm.
Well, if the thing that we have to actually unlearn is this illusion called race, right? Which does indeed formulate like the kind of ideological foundation upon which individuals are kind of distinguished, right? Or kind of made to be separate. Mm-hmm. Even though it has no kind of biological basis at all. It's a total social construct. It's really a better way that I like to kind of define it is not as a social construct, it's really as a myth, a story, an explaining story that we use to help to explain how things got to be this way. If we have to unlearn that, then that also too means that we have to actually relearn something else. What, pray tell, is that? Love. Love not as an idea, not as a romantic ideal, you know what I'm saying? Not as the idea of marriage, or not as the idea of partnership, or not as the idea of, you know, kind of parental or parent-child relationships, but love as a practice and love as an art, right? If we relearn or reinfuse our educational vision, right, with love, the art of loving, right, as a practice of freedom, now our education can become not only liberatory, but it can also become constitutive. That's the thing. Within an American cultural framework, right, the explaining story that we use to describe, right, the identity, right, of America and like kind of how things came to be this way, we imagine and use these narratives and frameworks of success as and liberation and freedom, right, as meaning something so abstract that it has no earthly tie, right? Like in Black folks community, right, they call it kind of like this. They got this phrase, right? You know, don't be so heavenly minded that you know earthly good, right? And so the whole notion about that is really to kind of introduce the importance of like phronesis, practical wisdom, right? Yo, you can have those lofty ideas about liberty and justice for all. That's cool. But we got to ground it and anchor it into some reality. And here's the reality for Black folks, right? Kind of sort of a long time where we have not been like kind of, you know, allowed or kind of, you know, connected or given access or even had lanes that were actually created or constructed as it was for others, right? For us to gain access to liberty and justice for all. So we have to actually relearn all of that. How do we relearn it? Through love. By reinvigorating our educational structure, system, and vision, our very vision for education and learning, with love as a practice of freedom, right? And that's really where I think that this here all kind of, you know, coalesces into, say, the new Underground Railroad. So what would this look like if we were to enact this vision of love, right, in our educational system? Well, if the active quality of love is giving, right, and that giving actually takes place within partnership, well, then that's exactly precisely where we need to start, right? Educational institutions, specifically community colleges, I would actually argue is actually out of the entire educational system, right? K-12 and higher ed, those two components make up, right, our educational system here in the US. And out of all of those myriad kind of kind of institutions that we have within those larger frameworks, I would say community colleges are perhaps maybe the most uniquely positioned, right? They're the vestibule that actually helps to usher in, right, or connect, right, those folks who are actually in the public sphere, right, or those folks who are outside to the entranceway of academia and also to, right, the career or community college, college pathways. Community colleges need to enact more partnerships with local K-12 institutions. And by partnerships, we can think about this in terms of dual enrollment programs, but it would be better if we were to think about dual enrollment programs, like, say, for example, in community organizations, as in addition to K-12 K-12 institutions, right? If you had community colleges that were offering, like, say, college readiness courses, specifically in Black and brown neighborhoods, where by and large, through de facto segregation, right, kind of, racism 3.0, right? Like, when you kind of have them who are de facto isolated away from gaining access or away from college resources, community colleges, one of their struggle points is that they have not, right? One of their struggle points in terms of establishing more equitable practices and a more equitable approach to college readiness, right, for the students who they have incoming. One of the things that they have struggled kind of historically to do is to make those college resources more available to the students that will be coming to them down the line. One of the ways that they can actually shore up that shortcoming is by offering their classes in a dual enrollment fashion and building these institutional partnerships. I'm not just talking about with the K-12 institutions, I'm talking about with local community organizations. I'm talking about local churches. I'm talking about, right, boys and girls clubs. I'm talking about all of those places where during the pandemic, right, they may have actually kind of sort of lightweight gotten shut down, right? But you still have people who are connected to those communities. If community colleges were actually out there right now offering courses, right? And these are things that could actually be filled with part-time instructors in English and math and reading, so on and so forth. You can allocate certain portions, colleges can allocate certain portions of their part-time faculty load, or even their full-time faculty load, right? Not just to kind of put it all on part-timers. They can allocate some of their load to these dual enrollment courses, right? In such a way that you can begin to introduce these Black and brown folks, these Black and brown youth, to something that they had not gotten introduced to before, which is just quite simply the game on how to get not only into college, but how to actually thrive while you're there.
I like that, the Underground Railroad. Yeah. It's like a love network that you're talking about, that it's not just the university that's kind of like rocket launching these people out and then hoping they have a safe landing. Yeah, we got a long way to go.
Yes, we definitely do. But that at least gives us a framework, right? Like I mentioned again, where I see a tie-in point, right? With that gives us a kind of framework to enact that vision that Carter G. Woodson was talking about, insofar as, right, sending folks on that academic, right, kind of journey, right, to explore beyond the neighborhood that their home community, and to help them to come back, right, to actually reinstill it, reinvigorate it, and to help to really kind of repopulate it with new dreams, new visions, and new ways of imagining. That's the new Underground Railroad vision.
And that's like the Joseph Campbell hero's journey, like back to the thing.
Hello.
Right, and that's like the bell hooks.
Come on now.
Love, right?
Where you think I got? I'm so sorry. I didn't even mention this. I'm so sorry. You just reminded me. I'm out of pocket. I didn't come up with that whole love as a practice of freedom thing. I got that specifically from chapter 15 out of Outlaw Culture of Bell Hooks. She's talking about the need to reinvigorate our political vision with the practice and the art in a practical way of love. For me, I thought about, damn, she's deep. What if we did that for education?
Yeah. Yep. And then what happens if we did it for society and like the criminal injustice thing that we do? And what if we did it for, I don't like, finance? And so my I know we got to wrap up, but my friend kind of dropped some knowledge on me. All right, so Warmth of Other Suns. Isabel Wilkerson, she does not use the word racism once. because she says it's not right. It's caste. Okay. Then she writes caste, just came out this year. Everyone's like talking about it. It's dope. I did some reading with it and teaching with it. Dr. Cherise Selly Burden from Carleton College critiques caste and says, you didn't say the word capitalism once. And you were talking about three societies. You're talking about caste India. You're talking about Nazi Germany, and you're talking about whatever you want, Jim Crow America, or Nazi America.
Yeah.
And all these three things, yes, they have the hierarchy of caste, yes. But you didn't say what keeps the pyramid shape, right? Right? And so if you're not talking about capital and how, God, I was just having a talk with my friend today. That's why I was late to our thing. And she was like, yo, I'm from New Zealand. She's South Asian from New Zealand. And she was like, so you have this pyramid in America, and you all think you're the best and everything, but people are in hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt of college in America. And she's like, in Australia and New Zealand, there's a different model. And I don't know all of it, but like, basically she was saying like two things. In Australia, you don't pay for college. Then when you get out, depending on what level, like what job you have, if you become a doctor, then you start paying for college at a doctor level. So it's more expensive. If you come out of college and you're a teacher, then you pay back at a teacher lower salary level because you're not making as much as a doctor. Australia. New Zealand, she says, if you stay in country and don't do the brain drain thing to America, you don't have to pay interest on your loan. Wow. So there's different ways of doing these things. And then two other things. One, she goes, in vitro fertilization in Korea is $2,000. In America, it's $20,000.
Yeah.
Right. And then we started getting into healthcare, $600 a month for something that you may not even use because it's the whole racket of, you talk about racial racketeering, it's because there's industries of
medical industrial complex.
Thank you. Medical industrial complex. And she just broke it down, and we started talking about Harvard, Princeton, Yale, all the Ivy Leagues that got rich off of slavery and still do the old, affirmative action for white rich folks now, because 43% of Harvard white folks are donors, athletes, or legacy. She just broke it down, and she's like, yeah, America's crazy. It's just like, it's a cycle at the top of the rich chain that rich folks just keep getting richer. And I guess the other opposite is just like poor folks keep getting poorer. And so we what you're doing with Emerge, what you're doing in your classroom, what I'm trying to do at Dominguez Hills, what Matt is doing at Dominguez Hills, and a bunch of other folks, we're trying to interrupt this cycle and then offer something new. And I think this love ethos, beloved community, underground railroad, like trying to get out of this kind of sick system is so necessary, because it will show a new path of what could be. And then to get even more meta with our listeners, me and my friends, we talk about everything. So we would start talking about pornography, and we were like, there's some Balesa is this new female made, run, owned pornography thing. And they're like, what happens in the sheets happens in the streets. So if you can do healthy stuff and model it in the bedroom, you're gonna have a healthy street society, street life, and then real life, And so
hello.
all of it, all the industries, man, if we can model more healthy, authentic living, we can not just survive in America. People could actually thrive.
Absolutely. I mean, let's converge it, right? Let's kind of call out the convergence point here. purest experiment in capitalism ever in the history of human civilization was slavery. There's some scholars, right? And these are like pioneering scholars, right? Straight trailblazers, right? Won't even mention like racism without connecting it to capitalism, because it's a bit like, like, okay, well, hey, I have a whole outfit, right? But you just have a shirt. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, hey, I'm fitted, right? I got a whole new outfit. I came with a shirt. And not even I kind of sort of mean the pun there, right? I mean, if we, I understand. I went to a neighborhood, I went to schools, right, and came from a neighborhood where not everybody could actually afford whole new outfits, right? There's a reason and a rationale for why they could not, and it's largely because of the unavailability, right, of jobs that actually paid living and decent wages. You know what I'm saying? So I do kind of sort of mean the pun there when I make that analogy, right, about like, the shirt not necessarily representing the whole outfit, but getting mislabeled as such. I think that's kind of, that's a part of it, because when we think about racism, right, and especially on a wide scale social level, we can think about a wide scale social level, and it's some examples of what that looks like through film, media, and television, right? Just to throw a few out there. What we see and hear being talked about whenever we see or hear, right, racism is only race. And it usually most popularly gets reproduced or kind of engaged as a kind of black and white kind of binary, right? Like kind of like just within these strict terms, not necessarily like kind of dealing, it doesn't really dive or delve into like, say, intra kind of examples, right, of racism, right? Intracultural examples of racism. And it doesn't really deal with racism like kind of at a deep level. It just kind of does it on the surface level, like Crash.
Yeah.
Crash was the film, right? Everybody started out, oh my gosh, Sandra Bullock's racist and all this stuff. And then at the end of it, it's like, oh my gosh, well, look at Sandra Bullock. Now she's so nice. She got helped up, right, by her house servant, and now she's changed. She slipped and fell, and now she's lifted back up, right? Like that's the way that we like consciously on a wide scale social level conceive of and think about and talk about race.
Yeah.
But even beyond that, right? I was going to use a Django Unchained analogy or example, but we ain't gonna go there right now. There's so much that we can kind of do to unpack that. We ain't gonna go there. We're gonna stick with the Craftsman. But there's so much more that's left chained up, or that's left restricted, or that's kept from so many Americans, and really just people like kind of throughout the globe, when we're talking about issues of race, when we don't link it or connect it or think about it as something that is an outgrowth or something that is an effect or something that is epiphenomenal, right? It's created from and exists right alongside of capitalism. When we don't engage with racism in that kind of way, right? When we don't recognize the constituency, right, of the constitutiveness between racism and capitalism, then we end up, even whatever solutions we would even begin to imagine, right, would only at best be a half measure, because we're only thinking about it in half terms, not as an integrated or a constitutive, or simple way for me to say it, complex problem, compound complex problem.
We have to go, but you got me thinking. Two things. One, Joe Brooks was just texting me over here on Zoom, and he was like, yeah, well, you're talking about Isabel Wilkerson, but also like Ibram X. Kendi, really dope scholar, but also is not attacking capitalism, right? Is still staying on the kind of the race, class, gender stuff, which we got to dissect, but you can't really dissect it if you're not like talking about capitalism. It's like when you're working on your relationship, and you're like, I'm gonna talk, like I'm gonna communicate better, I'm gonna try to like go to counseling more, and then your partner's like, yeah, but what about your side piece? Like, why are you still? And you're like, yeah, it's not really about that.
Ooh, hey, you slaying some folks right now in the spirit.
Well, it's like our addiction, right? And I'm as I'm hearing you talk, I'm thinking, isn't it convenient that like America did away with slavery and then just did another 100 years of sharecropping, which is just slavery with like, people making like cents instead of nothing. When the kind of industrialization started happening, and so maybe you got machines, you don't need human bodies doing this stuff. And then it's interesting, I think, in Europe, where the Nazis were having slavery. Like, we don't talk about that. Like, they were taking all types of white bodies and just doing slavery, right? Russians, Slavs, Poles, Jews, Romani. They were, my grandfather was making the engines for BMW and Mercedes to frickin' in the airplanes, right? We don't talk about this stuff. And so then when we see Schindler's List and we see these movies, we're like, wow, they were so cruel, they were so mean, which is, yes, of course, but the gears of it was to produce things for the empire, which was the Nazi empire, which was the Japanese empire, which was the American empire. And so I wonder if we could, is that Max Weber, Max Weber thing of, can we envision another world where we're not exploiting each other for labor on this kind of pyramid where you have to work at Walmart because you got to pay those bills and it's slave wages, like we were talking about the other day. But what else are you going to do? You're going to go work for Amazon? Like, good luck. You're going to work for you're not going to become a coder at Google because you don't have the education. So we do these things in society where we keep exploiting people in kind of neo-feudalistic things. But you got me thinking about the love ethic, because if we could switch to a new way of thinking, we could actually just, but that would mean a lot more people are like free, and that's dangerous.
Well. So here's what I'll actually say, and I'll make this just very, very quick.
Okay.
I know that we got to wrap right on up. Hip hop will save us. Hip hop will save us. Simple. I understood neoliberalism and capitalism, how it actually really functions, because I knew Ghostface Killer and Inspector Deck. 1993, they actually came out with a song called Cream. Cash was everything around me.
Get the money. Dollar bill, yeah.
You already know. Inspector Deck, Chef, they're cooking up mad verses. And really what they're doing is, for me as a kid, they're painting a picture that's quite familiar to me, even though it's all the way on the other side of the continent. When I get to Thomas, I begin now to understand the value, right, of knowledge of self, hip hop concept, right? Not only a hip hop concept, it's really more of an existential. It's kind of, I would actually argue that knowledge of self, the very notion of knowledge of self, right, or the concept, right, or the philosophy behind it, is an example of a kind of hip hop existential philosophy, right? By the time I get to Thomas, I actually learn about not just critical thinking tools, but knowledge of self as a practice or a way for getting beyond or outside of, right, for decoding the matrix. What I also to begin to learn is that there's certain hip hop artists that value not capital, not cream, right, not cash was everything around me, but the preservation of the culture and the extension of its community, which they do understand that you cannot have without having some capital, but it ain't all about capital, right? And those are the people like Nas. Those are the people like Damian Marley, right? Those are the people, right, like who we got introduced to, Kendrick, right? And I would be remiss if I did not say, right, to this day, that Nipsey Hussle actually laid out the blueprint. Marley probably laid out the foundation for it, no doubt. But Nip actually takes it to a whole new level. And I'm not even gonna mention Master P and E40. Both of them come out with, mainstream popular songs. E40 had folks in every single decade, he still makes a banger. So we understand that it's not just about, no, I gotta completely, totally reject capitalism. It's not that hip hop folks, that hip hop heads are arguing for, but it's this careful dialectic, right, of both and. And here's the way that I think about the two actually coming together. Here's what I mean when I say the hip hop will save us. See, hip hop actually has its roots and its extension, right, that lie deep, right, within Black culture and the Black community, right? Whatever that could be said to actually be, right? And we understand that that's linked to traditions, literature, history, values, so on and so forth. There's a term within hip hop, right, called knowledge of self, that's articulated through an Ndinkra symbol, otherwise known as the Sankofa. Another Ndinkra symbol, right, is also the symbol for cooperative economics, or Ujima. here's what I mean when I say this, right? Hip hop will save us. It's not all about, right? We ain't got to necessarily throw out the baby with the bathwater, but we can actually, you know, kind of pick what tools we want to use to actually separate the baby from the bathwater. But cooperative economics, I believe, is a framework or a way of thinking about, or excuse me, a way of remixing our current approach to capitalism. I'm not talking about like ethical consumerism here. I'm talking about new structures and strategies for thinking differently about how it is that I actually accrue funds in order to live, and how it is that I can create avenues for my community to thrive and to grow. There's a project that's out, it's a nonprofit called the Boston Ujima Project, which if you want to see a model or a plan that is not only viable, but is something that is currently being enacted in a historically and economically isolated community, right? And I want to say isolated because there was kind of intentionality and the kind of set of legal structures that kind of made things become this way, right? For Black folks who find themselves in Boston in an economically vulnerable position, right? You know, deindustrialization, globalization, you know, that whole notion and that whole story. Those are all structural events and epochs that end up kind of shaping or creating those conditions of economic, say, destitution, right? But you actually have those very same people in that same community thinking about these new ways of how to reimagine our relationship to not only capitalism, but also to each other. Cooperative economics, right, through the Boston Ujima Project, I think kind of gives us a vision and a plan for how to enact a wholesale remix of the relationship between banks, education institutions, family structures, as well as the federal and state government, as well as local governments, and community economic independence, right? Or community economic self-determination. Just to kind of bring this right on back to how we did indeed, right, begin this conversation about really the search or the journey for, right, the best route for Black folks to actually kind of achieve self-determination. Right?
I love it. I love it. And we got to wrap it. I'm just, you're talking about stuff your dad taught you, and I'm looking up. Okay, Ujima, right, is the what is it, collective? Because it's also one of the Kwanzaa.
It is. It's one of the Kwanzaa principles, but it's also known as cooperative economics.
Right. And then I was like, is there any relationship? Because my dad used to teach me about Julius Nyerere in Tanzania and Ujama, which is, I guess it means familyhood in Swahili. And yeah, and he, I mean, he was a socialist, you know, Julius Nyerere. And so I just, there's actually different, like you're saying, different ways to do this thing, and we just keep saying there's only one way, but there's actually different socialists, democratic socialists, you know, other collectivist working ways, and so we need to explore that, and I'm gonna check out this Boston Ujima, man, and we need to start teaching this stuff more in our classes and just in our spaces, because we can't have a different world, right? It could be different. Hello.
That's why I say hip hop will save us.
I like that. So okay, so Nas is a little wrong, right? Hip hop is not dead yet. Okay.
You know, I think Nas, man, that's in otherwise, right, what in hip hop we would call, right, that's the God MC, you know, all respect, all love to my man Nas, but you know, I think even he wasn't fully invested even in that phrase itself. Yeah. I think he was trying to provoke a spark of fire, and look at what got produced from that. Oh my gosh, we got Kendrick Lamar, we got Drake, we got J. Cole, and don't be hating on Drake. Look here, let Drake actually put pen to paper and like show you all, like he'll make a hit and drop bars at the same time. He's on a different level. I don't hate on Drake. He's very lyrical. You got J. Cole, we got Joey B.A., we got, you know, folks like Mick Jenkins, we got folks like No Name, we got like, I mean, there's all of these different people who are like, wait, what you say, Nas?
Right. And No Name.
I agree with you, my brother.
No Name passed up on the Judas and the Black Messiah because she's like, it doesn't focus enough about communism and his anti-capitalist ways, and so that's really dope. All right, I gotta let you go. Communityworksinstitute.org. Come check us out. Professional development opportunities. Professor Damon.
Can I make a
Yes,
plug
yes,
real quick?
please, yes, please.
So Zach just actually laid out the website for Community Works Institute. I want to also too just kind of plug in just the Emerge website too as well. So if you all can find us either on Instagram at Emerge Los Angeles, that's our screen name, and also too you can find us online. Just type into either a Google search or just in your web address bar, emergelosangeles.org. No www needed, just emergelosangeles.org.
Beautiful, beautiful. And are there some ways that folks can get involved or donate or all the things?
Absolutely. Anything that you would need in order just to quite simply get involved, or if you want to become a mentor, like for some of these young boys, we're still accepting mentors. So if you were moved or were disturbed or found yourself like, yo, last year, George Floyd, or even 3 years ago, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, right? I mean, from Tamir Rice to Michael Brown. So if at any point in time you look just outside and you say, man, you know what, there's something I need to actually do, go to emergelosangeles.org, go down all the way to the bottom of the page. You'll find a link to sign up to become a mentor. And if you have the heart, but don't really have the time, you can definitely donate at any point in time to emergelosangeles.org. Just go there, you'll find the donate button. It'll be pretty, I think it'll be pretty straightforward right on up there. When you log on in, you'll be able to actually follow the prompts and it'll guide you. Beautiful,
beautiful. Go to that website, Emerge, check it out. Professor Damon, thank you so much for being here. This was beautiful. Hang around for a second afterwards, but we're just gonna say bye to our guests. Everybody have a beautiful, safe Sunday. Peace, be well, and thank you for tuning in to Spotlight Series.